Hi. So continuing from the last session with regards to emotions. Last time I spoke about the relationship between emotions and the body, how the body can actually instigate emotions and how we can get stuck. And now I'd like to look at it from the point of view of the mind, because you cannot really separate any of them. So from the point of view of the mind, let me give you an example of belief systems. We all come into this world and very, very quickly, because we want to please our parents, we want to please our teachers, we want to please the group that we're with, we want to belong. If we don't belong, we're isolated, and if we're isolated, we're going to be fearful for our lives, because that's how we're made. We need to be part of a group. This is genetic DNA stuff. The need to belong is very powerful. And we very quickly pick up rules of behavior, how to be. We want to please our parents. And so our minds begin to develop strategies for us to survive in the world. And as we move through life, we pick up belief systems to do with religion, to do with politics, to do with health, to do with science. And people become very rigid. Rather than take on board a belief system and just keep it in abeyance because it's a belief, you have no proof, you have no way of knowing whether it's the truth or not. All you know is it's a working hypothesis. But we don't use beliefs as working hypotheses, we use them as matter of fact, this is how it is. And that makes us rigid. But what is there in that rigidity to keep us rigid? What is the motivation that keeps us rigid? Where is the control? And the control is always the same: fear. I am certain that most of you will have come across this sooner or later when we meet with someone and they have a very rigid belief. They could be Christian, they could be Democrats, they could be anything, but they have a very rigid belief system of this is how it is. And if you attempt to give an opposing view, it very quickly becomes polarized. And I'll be nice to you who are listening, I'll say it's the other people. And the other people become very flustered and irritated and dictatorial. And that wouldn't happen to you, of course, just the other people. And they're emotionally upset, although it may not come across as that. They make it angry, frustrated, the voices will raise. What's going on? We're talking about what people believe. We're not talking about the truth. But isn't that the problem? that we believe that what we believe is the truth. We're right, they're wrong. And what's behind that is fear. They will not contemplate a perception that is in contrast to theirs. They're not sitting on the fence of their belief. They're not treating their belief as a working hypothesis. They're treating their belief like this is the truth, it's life and death. And this is the subject of propaganda. And political parties, religious groups, everybody does propaganda. Those who believe, and I need to put a question mark around those who believe, they try to propagandize their view. So if I believe that Russia is the real baddie, when I say Russia, I could mention Iran, I could mention, I don't know, Korea, North Korea, the Chinese, any of those who are not us, who are not the West. Then people have listened to they've read a lot of newspapers, they've listened to a lot of pundits going on about how they're the baddies and we're the goodies. And we have absorbed that by osmosis. And so we are now very strong in our belief they're the baddies, we're the goodies. And if you were to speak in a way that questions that narrative, they will become exasperated, irritated, reactive, contentious, argumentative, all manner of things. What's going on? Why does that happen? Emotionally, they're being triggered. And that's true for all of us, right? So if we have a belief which is not based on reality, on actual experience, but something that has been fed into us, we've taken it on board, we have not digested that information, we have not explored it, we have not looked at it from different sides to come to, okay, purely on the basis of probability, I think one side is more likely to be right than the other, and so I'm going to hedge my bets and take this side. Fair enough. You've explored it, you've thought about it, you digested it from every angle, you've come to a conclusion, that's what you believe, based on all the probabilities. It's still not the truth, but it's as close as with present evidence you can get to. And then if someone argues against you, you might come up with your information. The chances are the other one's going to react, but you're going to stay slightly detached. You're not going to get all flustered about it, because you can see that they're indoctrinated. They're lost in their belief system. And you can see that now they're getting all emotional about it because there's something going on. What's going on? What's going on is that beliefs which we introject, i.e. we take on board but we don't digest. It's like a meal we've just gobbled up and it sits in our stomach. It hasn't been digested. We've simply accepted what we've been told. And the reason why we've accepted it is because it's been told to us with fear. There is fear in there. If someone is trying to get us to believe something externally, it will always come with fear attached to it. And fear is what we will use, the glue that will keep that belief system in place in our heads. And anything that affects that belief system immediately will give rise to that fear. And the fear could be, I will be excluded from my family because now I do not believe that vaccines work, because I can see whatever and they really believe vaccines work, and now I'm questioning that narrative, and they're afraid because everybody's got to be vaxxed, and so they're getting anxious, fearful, etc., and they've got fear built into it. You're a young lad and your father is telling you, this is not what you do. You need to behave like this. This is what you have to do. I don't know how you would do it, but that's what. So the parent would very sternly tell you off about behavior. And now you would take that on board. But what you would take on board would be the fear that if you do not behave the way your father wants you to behave, you might lose his love, you may lose his attention, he may stop looking after you, he may dump you somewhere. There is fear. So most belief systems which have not been, which are rigid, they have fear as an essential glue that keeps us in that belief. The most obvious one here is going to be being a Catholic. If you're a Catholic, traditionally, a traditional Catholic, then you would believe that we have the one life, we have one soul, and when we die, we will either go to heaven, hell, possibly purgatory. And so it's really important to maintain your belief, because part of that belief is that all your sins can and probably will be forgiven up to the moment that you're going to die. This is why a priest is so important at the very, very end, before you, as you're going to die. Do you have any sins? Quick, give me your sins, son. Give me your sins, so that I, the priest, on behalf of you know who, can absolve you of all your sins, and you will then go to heaven. And I have met many Catholics over the years who are motivated. Their belief system revolves around this fear that they will go to heaven, to hell. Not they'll go to heaven, they'll go to hell. I mean, they're very pious, very devoted, lots of church, this, that, the other, and do lots of good works, etc. But underneath that, if you scratch the surface, you will find the fear of hell. So, all the powerful people in the world understand this. They understand the power of fear as a motivation for whatever you want. Okay, so you now come to me, I have a belief system, you begin to knock on the door of my belief, and now and I get all reactive. And I begin to tense up. What am I doing? I am triggering hidden, the unconscious. The unconscious is not just emotional trauma, it's also undigested belief systems. They're part of the unconscious. We are not aware of that because we don't question our belief, because to question it is to bring forth the fear, and the fear is there to keep us in the belief. And within groups, if you question the belief, when people believe things, they tend to congregate into groups. They believe that. sorry to keep coming up with a Democrat, but I'll say Labour this time. So if you are really into Labour, and if you've really taken that on board, the whole communistic ideal of Labour, and if you then find yourself questioning your stance, your belief, because you look around, you see all these politicians, you see what they're doing, and you say, well, I'm not sure about this anymore. But you belong to a group, and as a group, sorry, the strong winds moving the camera. So as a group, you come together, you discuss, you reinforce your beliefs with each other, force of action, get your emotions going in a certain way. But now suddenly you come in, I'm not sure I believe this anymore. I think I'm going to go conservative or reform. I mean, no choice is a good choice, all right? But nevertheless, let's say you go that way. And your mates, well, they used to be your mates, they now see you as an outcast because you're not one of them anymore. Before you know it, you're out of the group. They don't want to know you because now you're touching on their fear. They don't want you raking around their belief system. So you will feel isolated, you'll be out of the group. And if they were your friends, so-called friends, if you thought they were your friends, you now realize they're not your friends, they were just acquaintances, sharing communal fear. And the fear of being isolated by the group can actually keep you in the belief system. You don't want to question your own belief system because being part of the group is really important. So that's one of the dilemmas we have as human beings, right? We like to congregate in groups who share our beliefs, and if they become rigidified and we start questioning them, we're going to lose our mates. We're going to lose the people we're surrounded by. And I've encountered this many, many times over the years since my childhood, when people belong to various sects. And as soon as one of them fell out of it, right, family, not even the family can speak to them anymore. They're now cast out. So for the average human, this is a powerful fear, and it keeps people under the thumb. But it's not just within the groups, individual groups, it's also government institutions, They program us as to how to be in the world. We take on board the fear they've given us to keep us there, and to question that is even worse than being separated from the group, because if I start to question the beliefs related to the governmental whatever it is, I will now be labeled as radical, as what's the word, conspiracy theorist, subversive, communist, Nazi, anti-Semitist. I mean, we've got all these lovely phrases, haven't we? And they're all ways of pigeonholing people who no longer see the world the way that we do. And we use those phrases, we bring up those phrases, especially to label, to throw dirt on people. And if they say something we don't want to hear, we don't like, because it begins to affect our belief systems, we throw out those phrases, get rid of them. They're this, that, or the other. We don't have to listen to them. We smear people who have a different opinion from ours, from the collective. That's how we defend ourselves. So anyway, so that's what we do with the head to protect our belief systems that we are indoctrinated by, that we, and what these belief systems do is they stop us from seeing the world as it is. It keeps us locked in our heads. We don't see reality. We can't see reality because we've got a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper is called fear, and fear stops us from going there. So I mentioned before how we can also interfere with the emotions, because the emotions can be abused both by the genetic programming within us and by our minds. Both of them can trigger emotional responses, and the mind especially will interfere with an emotion that it judges as though we cannot fully experience it. So any emotion which is too intense for us to experience, we've got to shut it down. And what I mentioned last time is how we use the body, the muscles themselves, to switch off the signal so that we are no longer connected to the effect the emotion is having in our bodies. We disassociate from it and it goes into the unconscious. It's out of our minds, out of our awareness, until some silly bugger comes around and they start prodding at our belief systems. And now we get all flustered because whatever's in the background is now coming to the surface. So traditionally, when we have intense emotions we cannot deal with, i.e. the emotional intensity is too much to bear, we have two escape routes. One is for the body to become physically distorted through muscular tensions, which, over a long period of time could lead to things like scoliosis of the spine, to give you one example, or hunchback, twisted, all manner of things can happen simply because the muscles have become constricted and in spasm for such a long time, and then the fascia becomes involved. It becomes a nightmare to resolve. The other one is the mind, and I had a girlfriend like that, and what people do in that situation, when they cannot deal with it, they take a holiday from reality. What I mean by this is they go lulali. That's not a phrase you use these days, of course, but literally that's what happens. They go lulali. They can no longer think on the subject. They go into fantasy world. I once went to, it wasn't a hospital, could have been a hospital, it's a long time ago, and there was this guy walking towards me, and he wasn't very straight in his body, but he was sort of walking towards me. But what fascinated me was his mannerisms, because he was making movements with his hands and he was talking to himself. And I realized that this is how he was dealing with the suppression of his emotional intensity. Rather than experience the trauma of whatever had gone on for him, he literally had taken a holiday from reality. And so he was using his body and his words so that he would not think, so that he would not experience whatever it was he was trying to avoid. So it was an avoidance tactic. It was an extreme avoidance tactic. But many people do that. Many people have these avoidance tactics where some part of their body starts to do whatever, or they start talking to themselves, and it becomes a form of distraction. Not distraction, but to distract ourselves. Not destructive, just to distract ourselves. And this is one way. So some people, when they cannot cope with the emotional intensity of those emotions which have been generated either mentally or by the body, then they will take a holiday from reality. And, that's one way. It's as good as any other way of saving ourselves from ego death, I suppose. If I look at it from the point of view of the body, we could say that physically we have this urge. Certainly as a man, we have these sexual urges, and we want to find a mate, and we want to we want to have sex, but this is primordial. This is deep from within us. This is a hormonal imperative, and we're in a modern culture. Within modern culture, you have to behave. You have to conform. You mustn't be extravagant in any way. You have to really keep tabs on your sexuality. Stop moving those hips. Stop displaying yourself as someone who was totally uninhibited. Now that's a good word, inhibition. Totally uninhibited might do. So we've learned to, with the mind, we've learned to control the expression of those sexual impulses. But that suppression has got to go somewhere. And what happens then is that although that impulse originated from within our genetic DNA into our hormonal system, into some sort of physical activity, we've now self-centered. We have learned to inhibit our sexual drive. And then we wonder why we are inhibited when we are with a member of the opposite sex. Because we're all over the place, because we have conditioned ourselves. We have suppressed ourselves. We are not flowing, like sexuality, something that should flow through us. We're all sexual beings till we get too old to be sexual beings. We're all sexual beings. It's part of our physicality. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that of itself. But within our culture, it is censored. So we self-censor, we interfere with the process, and then we become inhibited. And we do that with our minds because of beliefs how we have to be in the world. Of course, I'm not saying go crazy. I'm not saying you can go and do whatever you like. We have to be cognizant of other people and their needs, their wishes, where they're at, etc. All I'm simply saying is, within ourselves, we need to be free. Inner freedom. And inner freedom is sexual freedom, mental freedom, emotional freedom, physical freedom. And that's what happens inside me. And it reminds me of this.
Coming.
What about me? What do I do? Do I just stand here like an object?
No. You do an eclectic celebration of the dance. You do fussy, fussy, fussy. You do Martha Graham, Martha Graham, Martha Graham. Or Twyla, Twyla, Twyla. Or Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd. Or Madonna, Madonna, Madonna. But you keep it all inside.
Right, I think this has gone on a bit long. I'm going to have to stop here. Well, thank you for listening. I'll come back. Bye for now.